You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Braden here, and today is the fourth installment of my Dead Team series. The subject is the Phoenix/Arizona Coyotes hockey team. The Coyotes started out as the original Winnipeg Jets, a franchise that had enjoyed much success in the World Hockey Association, having made the league's finals in 5 out of the 7 years the league was in operation, and won the championship in 3 out of those years. The WHA as a league struggled financially though, and merged with the more financially stable NHL, absorbing 4 of the WHA's teams, including the Jets. The Jets remained in Winnipeg until 1996, although they did not have anywhere near the same level of success that they had in the WHA. In October of 1995, some Minnesota businessmen named Steve Gluckstern and Richard Burke purchased the Jets and planned to move them to St. Paul, a city that loves hockey, and at the time had been yearning for another NHL franchise after the Minnesota North Stars had moved to Dallas, Texas in 1993. However, a big hurdle for these plans was the fact that Gluckstern and Burke were not able to secure a lease at the Target Center, and so the pair decided to move the Jets to Phoenix, Arizona instead. Minnesota was ultimately awarded an NHL expansion franchise in 1997 named the Wild. Burke would later buy out Gluckstern 2 years later in 1998. The franchise was ultimately renamed the Coyotes after briefly considering Outlaws, Wranglers, Freeze, and Mustangs. The city of Phoenix had previously had a WHA team called the Phoenix Roadrunners, and also an International League team of the same name. The name was seen by many fans as a play on the Roadrunners name, because in the Looney Tunes cartoons, a hungry coyote chases a roadrunner around in a desert environment resembling Arizona. The colors for the new franchise were black, forest green, sand, sienna, and purple. The original jerseys featured a Kachina-looking coyote, which also served as the team's primary logo at that time. The team officially made the city of Phoenix home starting in 1996, and during the summer of '96, superstar center Jeremy Roenick was signed by the Coyotes, which was a huge deal and attracted many fans. Roenick teamed up with star left-winger Keith Tkachuk, and in addition, a youngster by the name of Shane Doan also impressed on the ice during those early years in Phoenix. The team made the playoffs in their first season in Phoenix as a number 5 seed, but were sadly eliminated by the 4th-seeded Anaheim Mighty Ducks in 7 games. They made the playoffs in their next 3 seasons as well, but each time failed to make it past the first round. In the Coyotes' first 6 seasons in Phoenix, they made the playoffs each one of those years, but couldn't quite get out of the first round. Their original home venue, America West Arena, was terrible for hockey because it was built solely for the Phoenix Suns basketball team. To start with, the floor was just barely big enough to put a full-size NHL rink on it. In addition, the hockey configuration left one end of the upper deck hanging over the boards and ice, which for some people obscured up to a third of the ice. And so the 18,000 capacity that America West had for basketball only had 16,000 for hockey, which was the second smallest NHL venue at that time. Little did the upset fans know that eventually the arena situation would get much worse for the Coyotes. In 2001, the Coyotes were sold to a local land developer by the name of Steve Ellman, and the GOAT of hockey, Mr. Wayne Gretzky himself, became a part owner too, and was named head of hockey operations. Ellman immediately knew that something had to be done about the arena situation. Either America West had to be upgraded or a new arena had to be built. After several failed attempts, the team was finally able to move into a new arena called Glendale Arena, located in the western part of the valley. Prior to the 2003 through 04 season, the NHL switched home and road jerseys, and that same year in 2003, the Coyotes moved into their new home. The Coyotes decided to completely change their uniforms and colors, ditching the Kachina Coyote and replacing it with a red and white Howling Coyote, which would serve as the team's main logo as well. The team's colors were also switched to red and white, a variation of which the Arizona Diamondbacks of the MLB would also use, and still use to this day. The team struggled for the next few seasons, and in 2005, Ellman sold the Coyotes to Jerry Moyes, a Utah businessman who founded Swift Trucking Company. This wouldn't be the last time the Coyotes were sold to a Utah businessman, but we'll get to that later. On August 6, 2005, former St. Louis Blues star Brett Hull, son of former Jet Bobby Hull, was signed by the Coyotes and given the number 9, which had previously been retired by the organization because it was worn by his father. However, he was given permission to wear it. In a surprising turn, Wayne Gretzky named himself head coach of the Coyotes, despite having no coaching experience whatsoever. Brett Hull never ended up playing for the Coyotes, retiring a week later. The Coyotes were scheduled to host the 2006 All-Star Game, but it was cancelled due to the 2006 Winter Olympics. The following season, the team played in a preseason game in Winnipeg on September 17, 2006, and were embarrassed by the Edmonton Oilers 5-0, who had appeared in the Stanley Cup Finals the previous season. The Coyotes finished the 2006-07 season at 31-46-5, which was their worst record since relocating to Phoenix in 1996. They had not made the playoffs since the 2001-02 season, and things were a mess. Several front office members were canned, and the team looked to rebuild. The team had a good draft in 2007, getting talent such as Peter Mueller and Martin Hanzal. They also traded for Radim Verbata, a right winger who had seen some success in recent years. But the really big signing came when the Coyotes claimed Russian goaltender Ilya Barzgalov off waivers on November 17, 2007, and Barzgalov started in net the same night, and not only that, pitched a shutout against the Los Angeles Kings. The Coyotes improved a lot that season, finishing the 2007-08 campaign with a 38-37-7 record, but unfortunately missed the playoffs. In September of 2009, Gretzky stepped down as head coach, and Dave Tippett took over coaching duties. Within 2 seasons, Tippett had led the Coyotes to their first ever 50-win season, finishing the 2009-10 season with a 50-25-7 record, and qualifying for the playoffs as a number 4 seed. Unfortunately for the Coyotes, they lost in 7 games to the number 5 seeded Detroit Red Wings, and once again were sent home in the first round. The team had yet to win a playoff series since arriving in Phoenix and becoming the Coyotes. The following season in 2010-11, they went 43-26-13 and made the playoffs again, this time as a number 6 seed. And who should they face? The Detroit Red Wings once again, and this time, sadly, they were swept. The fans were used to getting sent home in the first round, but this was just getting ridiculous. When would the poor Coyotes' fortunes change? As it turned out, the very next season, in the 2011-12 season, they won the Pacific Division for the first time, going 42-27-13 and making the Stanley Cup playoffs as a number 3 seed, where they faced the number 6 seeded Chicago Blackhawks in the opening round. Remember, the Coyotes had never won a playoff series since becoming the Coyotes, and so what was to come was shocking. The first 5 games of the series against Chicago went to overtime, tying the record for most consecutive overtime playoff games in NHL history. The Coyotes emerged victorious after 6 games, and the city of Phoenix partied after seeing a series win for their beloved Coyotes for the very first time. Next, they faced the number 4 seeded Nashville Predators, whom they defeated in 5 games, setting up a Western Conference Finals matchup with their Pacific Division rival, the Los Angeles Kings, with the winner going to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Kings were actually a number 8 seed, and so Phoenix was favored in this series. At least on paper, that is. LA went into Phoenix and stole the first 2 games on the road, winning 4-2 in Game 1 and 4-0 in Game 2. LA took a commanding 3-0 series lead after Game 3, and although Phoenix fought off elimination by winning Game 4, they lost in overtime in Game 5, and the dream season came to an end. Still, for a team that had never won a playoff series while in Phoenix, to shock everyone and advance to the Western Conference Finals was definitely a season that most folks in Phoenix would call successful. Now, unfortunately, we have to talk about the bad news. The organization itself was quietly suffering financial losses in the background as early as 2008. Moyes had given operational control of the team to the NHL, and the NHL eventually stripped him of ownership authority when he tried to sell the team to a Canadian billionaire who wanted to relocate the team to Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. By this point, it looked like the franchise's future in Phoenix was in doubt. By 2009, 2 potential bidders to purchase the team came forward, Chicago Bulls and White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf and a group called Ice Edge Holdings. Unfortunately, both bids fell through. A new frontrunner to purchase the team emerged, a Chicago investor named Matt Holsizer, but that too fell through. In 2011, the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg to become the new Jets, ending the speculation that the Coyotes would be purchased and relocated back to Manitoba. The original Jets team history stayed with the Coyotes, but all associated trademarks were transferred to the new Jets. During the 2012-13 NHL lockout, the NHL was in talks to sell the Coyotes to former San Jose Sharks owner Greg Jameson, but yet again the deal fell through. Ironically enough, the deal would have actually kept the Coyotes in Phoenix for at least 20 years, and the plan was to drop the Phoenix moniker and instead use Arizona Coyotes. The NHL needed to find a buyer quick. The team had been losing money every season since 2009, and things were not looking good. The NHL decided to relocate the Coyotes if a buyer was not found by July 2nd, 2013, and the very likely destination of this relocation was Seattle. But the new buyer was in fact found, and it was approved on July 2nd itself, cutting it very close. The new owners were a Canadian-based group known as the Renaissance Sports and Entertainment, or RSE for short. The city of Glendale agreed to give the group $15 million per year in management fees to keep the Coyotes in the valley. However, there was a clause that if the team lost more than $50 million in the next 5 years, they could relocate. On January 29, 2014, RSC announced the team would go by the name Arizona Coyotes moving forward because the team had been playing in Glendale for quite some time and were not technically in Phoenix any longer. The team's logos and colors remained the same. In October of 2014, 51% of the ownership stake was bought by a hedge fund manager based in Philadelphia named Andrew Barroway. The Coyotes' on-ice performance sucked, and financial losses once again began piling up, and the organization began fighting with the city of Glendale. On June 10, 2015, Glendale City Council voted to terminate its previous agreement with the Coyotes, but just a month and a half later, they agreed to a brand new deal. On November 14, 2016, the Arizona Coyotes announced plans to build a brand new arena, which was scheduled to be completed prior to the 2019-20 season. The project would include a separate 4,000-seat venue that the Arizona State University Sun Devils men's hockey team would use as a home venue. However, plans were scrapped when ASU pulled out of the deal. Following the 2016-17 season, Barroway bought out the rest of the ownership group to become the sole owner of the Coyotes, and the following season the Coyotes parted ways with longtime captain Shane Doan, who was the last remaining member of the organization since they had been in Winnipeg. The next year, in 2018, it was announced that the Coyotes would move from the Pacific Division, which they had competed in since first arriving in Phoenix in 1996, and would be placed in the Central Division as part of a complete league realignment in preparation for the expansion Seattle Kraken. The change would become effective prior to the 2021-2022 season. The team also extended their lease at Glendale Arena, which had since been renamed Gila River Arena, through the 2019-20 season. Andrew Barroway sold his controlling ownership stake in 2019 to real estate magnate Alex Marullo, but Barroway remained a minority owner, at least until he was arrested and sold the minority stake to Marullo. The following season, in 2019-20, the Coyotes finally returned to the playoffs for the first time since that Western Conference Finals appearance in 2012. The playoffs operated a little differently because this was during the pandemic, so it had a qualifying round added. The Coyotes defeated the Predators 3-1 in the qualifying round, but lost to the Colorado Avalanche 4-1 to end their season. It was the last time as of this video's release that the Arizona Coyotes ever appeared in the postseason. Now, this is where the whistle of death really starts for the poor Coyotes. On December 8th, 2021, the Coyotes were informed that they would be forced out of Gila River Arena for failure to pay the $1.3 million in taxes they owed, $250,000 of which they owed to the city of Glendale. The team did in fact pay the next day, but the team would only remain at Gila River Arena for a short time, choosing instead to move into the absurdly small Mullet Arena, which was used for ASU men's ice hockey team, making their home venue the smallest in the NHL by a lot. They began playing there starting with the 2022-23 season. The Coyotes knew that Mullet Arena was unsuitable even for temporary use and began making plans to build a new arena in Tempe. But the residents of Tempe rejected the team's proposal for a brand new $2.1 billion arena, $1.9 billion of which would be privately funded. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me, as that's more than most owners are willing to put up, but the residents of Tempe were having no part of it. This is when talks of the Coyotes relocating really began to get started, and I remember it was all over social media during that time. During the 2022-23 season, the Coyotes began to wear their Kachina Coyote throwback uniforms far more frequently, and following that season, they brought back the uniforms full-time, as well as making their primary logo the Kachina once again. The Coyotes continued to play at Mullet Arena for the 2023-24 season and finished that season with a 36-41-5 record. And while the NHL playoffs were about to get started, it was announced on April 13th, 2024 that the Coyotes were going to relocate to Salt Lake City due to not having any options arena-wise and losing money like crazy. The NHL bought the Coyotes from Marullo and then sold them to Utah Jazz owner Ryan Smith, but all trademarks and team history stayed with Marullo, and the Coyotes were considered a dormant franchise for all intents and purposes. The new Utah squad, using the temporary name Utah Hockey Club, had all Coyotes staff, players, and employees transferred to them as part of the deal, although they were considered an expansion franchise technically. On April 17th, 2024, the Coyotes played their final game, a 5-2 victory over the Edmonton Oilers, amid chants of "Salt Lake sucks" and "We love you, Coyotes." At that point, the Coyotes still had a chance to return, similar to what went on with the Browns becoming the Ravens and then returning a few years later with their original team's history. The NHL had given Marullo a 5-year window to secure a new arena or build a new one to reactivate the Coyotes. Marullo got right to work, having his eyes on a 110-acre plot north of Phoenix, but the plans for that fell through in June of 2024. Days later, Marullo announced that he had no further plans to build a new arena or move into one in order to revive the dead Coyotes. At the NHL Board of Governors meeting on June 26, 2024, Marullo relinquished his rights to the Coyotes. It's possible that the trademark name and all rights associated thereof will be transferred to Ryan Smith, who owns the Utah Hockey Club, but this is very much doubtful, and it is likely that the Coyotes will just fold. If they do fold, they will become the first major sports team to fold since the NHL's Cleveland Barons did so in 1978. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you hated it, leave a dislike. But consider becoming a channel member. Peace out.
I can never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right.